Dead by Daylight might have just made one of its worst decisions yet. DBD's 9.3.0 PTB might go down as one of the most confusing updates we've seen in a very, very long time. Behavior's goal with this patch was clear: fix anti-tunneling, fix anti-camping, and make the overall experience feel fairer. And honestly, that's a great direction to have. They've even delayed chapters and pushed back other content to focus on getting this one right. But here's where things start to fall apart. Somewhere in the process, the balance swung way too far towards the survivor side. They got major buffs that completely reshaped the pace of the game, while killers basically got left behind. And that's where the real problem begins. I'm not going to go line by line through every single change. Other creators have already done it perfectly. If you want a full breakdown, go and check them out. But I do want to talk about what this means for the long-term health of Dead by Daylight. Now, before we get into all of that, let's recap a little bit, because this whole situation didn't just come out of nowhere. In my last video, I said that behavior might actually be doing really bad with Dead by Daylight this year, and now we could be witnessing the start of potentially the game going downhill. 2025 was supposed to be the biggest year ever for DBD. We got FNAF, the anniversary event, 2v8, other limited game modes. Everything pointed toward the peak of the game. But instead, that's where the cracks really started showing. While we did break records, things started to fall apart. The core problems, the things players have been asking to be fixed for years, were still ignored. We didn't get a revamped tutorial. We didn't get any new onboarding for new players. Nothing to hook and keep them playing. Then The Walking Dead dropped, something that was severely anticipated, which should have been absolutely massive. But the launch was truly chaos. The big crossover stream with creators got hit with hackers behavior just weren't prepared for. It turned out to be a PR nightmare. To make things worse, the new Walking Dead map also confused everybody. Nobody knew if it was a tile or a full map, and behavior didn't initially make it clear if you needed to have the DLC to fully access it, and eventually I feel like they just went back on their word and changed it after the backlash. And just when the community thought it couldn't get messier, we got the Streetwise bug. It was completely game-breaking, but a behavior rep on the forum said it wasn't bad enough to kill switch, and that kill switches in general shouldn't even be public, which again backfired severely. So multiple apologies this year. Behavior said they were going to take a step back, they were going to delay chapters, they were going to fix bugs, and focus on the game health. That sounded great, but this is where the cycle keeps repeating. They work on something in silence, push it out, the community reacts, and then they end up reverting the whole thing. Months of work, just completely gone. The last BTB that we received was a perfect example. They introduced anti-tunneling and anti-camping measures, a solid idea on paper, but the execution had some flaws. If they had refined it and really listened to the feedback, it could have worked. The anti-slugging changes were actually fine, and the anti-camping didn't need much adjustment as it was, but whatever. But instead of fine-tuning, they doubled down on buffing the survivors while barely touching the killers. In their own words, they said that they didn't want to hold killers' hands, but what we ended up with was basically one or two blanket changes. A 5% haste boost until you're in chase or you use your power, and a very small blood point increase. And that right there is the core problem. Dead by Daylight, in my opinion, has always been a math equation. Whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other side. And when you don't, you end up exactly where we are now. Now look, again, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of everything. Like I said before, there are plenty of other creators like Otz out there who've already broken this down and talked about every single number, perk, and mechanic. If you want the full details, I highly encourage you to go and check out their videos. What I specifically want to focus on is the bigger picture of things, because before we talk about how we can fix everything, we need to identify the real problem that I see potentially brewing. And it's not just that this patch introduced a bunch of bugs. Though, yeah, I mean, several killers like Cenobite can't even use their power properly, Leatherface struggling with the pallets, and plenty of other technical issues. It's a BTB, so, I'll be more lenient with it. But remember, this update was supposed to be fixing major bugs, and that was the promise Behavior said in their roadmap. Yet again, here we are. The real overarching issue lies in the anti-tunneling and anti-camping system, in my opinion. Mainly the anti-tunneling part. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's a great idea on paper. They're trying to make those experiences less frustrating, which is solid. No one enjoys being tunneled out the match, but the problem isn't the idea of the systems. It's how extreme the survivor buffs are compared to what killers got in return. And this goes back to the idea that I talked about Dead by Daylight is like a math equation. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. It's fine to make survivor quality of life improvements. I think it's super healthy and they've made some good changes. But if killers don't receive something to balance it out, the game naturally leans too far in one direction, which historically has been bad for DBD. And that's what's happening right now. Killer players, even those who try to stay neutral like myself, are frustrated. It's not because they hate survivors or they don't want fairness. It's because killers are the power role in Dead by Daylight. That's just how the game is designed. It's literally built around that dynamic. The entire balance philosophy has always been 2 kills equals a balanced match, but the direction seems to be shifting, and not really in a healthy way. From what we've seen in the dev streams and discussions, it's clear that a lot of the leads are more survivor-leaning players. And that's completely fine. Play who you enjoy. But it can also create blind spots in understanding these changes impact high-level and long-term gameplay, especially on the other side. I can't say this 100% for certain. This is just my own speculation, but I genuinely think that Behavior is relying way too much on statistics to make their design decisions. I actually talked about this on my second channel years ago. When you uninstall Dead by Daylight, there's actually a survey that pops up and asks you, why did you quit? And almost every single option on that survey is written from a survivor perspective. So of course, data is gonna be a little bit skewed. If the devs are basing their decisions off of those statistics, that explains a lot. You can't balance DBD off of statistics alone. Look at the nurse. Statistically, she has a lower kill rate, but everyone knows she's one of, if not the strongest killer in the game. The numbers don't tell the full story. That's exactly what the problem we're seeing is now. For example, pallet density increase, changes to medkits like the septic agent that makes entire Atlans like that useless. All these tweaks feel like they straight up came from spreadsheets instead of real gameplay and real understanding. Look, at the end of the day, it all circles back. Same old math equation. I know you're gonna get tired of hearing that. You can't keep adding to one side without giving the other something to match it. Behavior's trying to improve the game health, and that's good, but if this pattern continues, it's gonna cause them even more long-term damage than the problems they're trying to fix. So finally, let's talk about the solutions, because honestly, there are ways behaviors can fix this without overcomplicating things. It'll take a lot of time and effort, but it can be done. Look, they already said they don't want to give killers base kit pop because it feels like they're holding the killer's hand. Fine. Let's meet halfway and actually complete this math equation. Off the top of my head, here's one of the ideas. If you really want to encourage unique hooks, maybe actually reward killers for doing that. For example, if you manage to hook 4 unique survivors in a row, which maybe not so easy, maybe you just hook 4 different survivors. All generators could be blocked for a short period of time. Simple, clean, rewarding. You're promoting healthy gameplay for both sides. You actually will balance around hooks now instead of just kills. There's another option. Every time you hook a different survivor instead of tunneling the same one, you trigger Scourge Hook. Maybe a random gen explodes and you get 5% off the progress. That way killers are directly rewarded for switching the targets and playing fair. Easy peasy. It reinforces gameplay instead of punishing everyone equally. And I think a lot of it has to do with the grading and ranking up system as well, which can also use some adjustments. But the biggest and most important fix, Dead by Daylight needs individual balancing for every killer. They actually started doing this at one point, but they just kind of stopped for whatever reason, and I get it. It's a lot of work. But look, there's over 40 killers in the game. Blanket changes don't just work evermore. Every killer is built differently, and treating them all like the same completely breaks the balance, and I think they're used to doing that because they do it with survivors, but survivors are all the same. Take the new Bloodlust change, for example. You get 5% haste after unhooking someone, but it goes away as soon as you start a chase or use your power. Sounds fine on paper. For high mobility killers like Nurse or Blight, that's completely reasonable, and Nurse isn't even that high mobility. You get a quick thrust, and then you can move across the map when you're using your power. It doesn't affect you that much. But for the slower moving killers like Hag, that change hurts way more. You hook someone, you set a trap, boom, your haste is gone before you even get to start the chase. Same with killers like Myers or Ghostface. The moment you try to use your power and stock, it's gone. Meanwhile, faster killers, it's a fine change to them. You know, you won't really mind it too much because you can just use your mobility. That's why we need tiered balancing, at least. Separate killers by mobility, based on their power. Stronger, faster killer gets smaller benefits. Slower setup-based killers get stronger ones. You can even make it dynamic. Mobility killers lose the haste faster, while low mobility killers keep it for longer. And the same can be said on the survivor side. You know that survivors now have 30 seconds of endurance and their haste that can be used offensively. Take a page out of the Knight's book, and shout out to Dark Magician Girl for this idea. If you're close to a survivor, maybe that 30 seconds actually depreciates way faster. That'll be a fantastic way to not use your benefits offensively. The point that I'm trying to make here is you can't apply the same blanket change to everyone when every killer plays differently. Survivors are all basically the same, so blanket changes make sense for them. But killers are a totally different story. Now let's take a step back for a second and talk about why all of these changes actually matter. Why these changes are so important right now. I'm not just a killer main trying to cry about it. In a perfect world, Dead by Daylight runs on a simple ratio, 4 survivors for every 1 killer. That's the entire foundation of the game. But here's the reality. Whenever killers aren't happy, they don't play. They leave. Period. And I'm not saying that to be dramatic in any way. This is true for pretty much any asymmetrical horror game. If you're supposed to be in the power role, but you don't feel powerful, you're not gonna play. It's been proven time and time again. That's one of the biggest reasons so many other asymmetrical games have just completely failed. The survivors, or whatever the weaker side is supposed to be, they get too many tools, they get too much resistance, and they have too much ability to fight back. Eventually, people who are supposed to be the power role just stop queuing up altogether. Call them what you want. You can call them crybabies, sore losers, whatever. But it's just the truth. If the power role doesn't feel like the power, they'll move on. And if you're a survivor main, you might not care about it. You might say, womp womp, who cares, right? Until it actually affects you. Yeah, but we're already starting to see that. Killer players are frustrated. Queue times for survivors are climbing, especially during evening hours. I've noticed it firsthand myself. Sometimes I just sit there for almost 10 minutes just waiting for a match because there simply aren't enough killers that are willing to play the game. It's concerning. And if behavior doesn't start addressing this within the next few weeks after this PTB goes live, you're gonna see one of 2 outcomes. The first, only the strongest killers will stick around. People will just play Nurse, Blight, Spirit, because why wouldn't they? They're the only ones that can compete. Or B, or a mix of both actually, I guess, nobody plays killer at all. Either way, that's bad. If only the top tier killers are left, survivors will face the same handful of overpowered characters that nobody wants to play against. That's already kind of the issue that we have with the higher MMR system that nobody likes. If nobody wants to play killer, survivor queues will skyrocket, matches get inconsistent, and frustration spreads across the entire player base. That's the exact same death spiral we have seen in other asymmetrical games, like last year, Home Sweet Home, Hide or Die. They all made the same mistake. Too much resistance against the killer role. And the simple result, the killers quit, the survivors get bored waiting, and the game dies out. Of course, there's tons of other issues with those games, but you get the point. Right now, Dead by Daylight doesn't really have any real competition. That's the only reason it hasn't hit critical levels yet. But that won't last forever. I mean, there's other games on the horizon, like Halloween, for example, that's coming out. And yeah, I'll say it, take that with a massive grain of salt. Listen, the people at Gun are cool, but they don't necessarily have the cleanest track record. But at the end of the day, competition is competition. And once there really is a strong competitor for DBD, those killer players who already feel frustrated are gonna jump the ship fast. And whenever that happens, the whole system is gonna fall apart. And it's a lot harder to fix after the player base officially leaves. I mean, for the past 10 years or so, DBD's been coasting. I'm not gonna be the guy that says DBD's gonna die. This, all I'm saying, it was supposed to be the biggest year for DBD. FNAF, new events, fresh players coming in, but everything got delayed, the anticipation just faded away, and nothing was necessarily fixed. Things were delayed, and we're still in the same thing. So yeah, maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion, but honestly, I can see this snowballing so badly. I've seen it before, and it starts the same way every single time. This has honestly been one of the worst years for DBD, ironically. And it's a shame to say. At the end of the day, though, I gotta say, look, I do love the devs. They're great people, genuinely. I've met them, I've hung out with them so many times. In fact, I'm actually gonna see them next week. You know, you've seen me do interviews with them all the time. Recently, I did one with Matthew Coates and Polly. Every single time, it's nothing but good times, good conversations, good laughs. They have a real passion for the game, and that's why I love Behavior. But I'll never be a person that just sits around, stays quiet when I disagree. I respect them very deeply, but sometimes I don't agree with them, and that's completely fine. That's healthy. That's how it should be. And I know there's always been a big misconception out there floating around that Fog Whisperers or members of the creator program cannot criticize Behavior or Dead by Daylight. It's just not true, and I've said it so many times. People love to run with this idea because it's become like the thing in the community that if you talk about a community, you know, you will lose your Twitch shirts or you'll be kicked out of the program. It's not the case. There's always more to these stories. There's always a bigger reason, but I'm not here to get into all of that. It's not my stories to tell. The point is, like I said, I love the devs. They're great. And I'm not just glazing them. They actually genuinely do care about the game. They're my friends, they're great people, and they have a really good project in front of them. And obviously for 10 years, they've had a great project, you know. That being said, and I'll say it again, Behavior is very close to getting this potentially right. And they've been trying this year. They've been experimenting. They've been innovating, and I can respect that. They've been pushing the boundaries. But in my opinion, the direction just isn't lining up with what the game truly needs. And I know I'm not the same person because tons of other people and creators have been feeling the same exact way. Dead by Daylight needs a few solid W's this year, big ones, because so far it's been rough. I'm still cautiously optimistic though. I genuinely believe that with the right feedback and the proper communication, they can actually turn this around and give some good changes and healthy changes for the game. And that's where you guys come in. Behavior actually put out a survey for the 9.3.0 PTB where you can give your own thoughts and opinions directly towards them. If you care about this game, go fill it out. Make your voice heard. I'll drop it in the link down below in the description. Whether you agree with me or you think I'm completely full of it, that's fine. It's just my opinion. And you're welcome to discuss it. You're welcome to have your own opinions as well. Go check out other creators' takes, compare perspectives, and let's keep the conversation going in the comments down below. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about Survivor versus Killer. It really isn't. It's the future and integrity of Dead by Daylight itself. Again, might be blowing out of proportion, but I definitely can see things falling apart. As always, I'm the king. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.